Welcome to Rooted Deeply, the podcast where we talk about what it looks like to love God, love others, and raise generations to do the same. You guys might remember John, my husband, from the last episode. We were talking about being married and misunderstood, and you can go back and listen to that. It might be a good baseline for what we're going to talk about today, which is the title of today's podcast is Headship and Humility. We're going to be talking about the roles of a husband and wife and what understanding those from a biblical perspective and with biblical definitions, how that changed things for us in our marriage. I don't think we're going to linger here. Let's just get into it.
Let's dive right into it.
Let's go.
Biblical definitions is key. That's really important to understanding the Bible.
Yeah. A lot of times we try to define Bible things with like Western thought, or even a Greek understanding. And it just doesn't work because it was written in Hebrew to Hebrew people in a time. Greek. Well, it was written in Greek too, but it was still written based off of the Jewish culture.
Right.
And so, we lose a lot of context and we really mess up things when we don't do proper hermeneutics and understand the scripture. So let's talk about Genesis 2:24. It says, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife, and the two become one flesh." What does that mean to you, John?
Well, on the wedding night,
no.
Two become one flesh. Just kidding. Why are you asking me that?
I guess that's a whole different podcast,
yeah,
honestly.
That's not really what we're talking about today.
My thought process with this verse was the two becoming one flesh and realizing that we're on a team. So when you have the headship and the submissive roles, you're still on the same team. You still are working towards the same things. It's about different giftings and strengths and intentions for your roles. And so why, if you are one flesh, would you not want the absolute best for each other? I think that's where I was stuck for a long time, was believing the lie, because it was a lie. Although your actions sometimes affirmed the lie, it was still a lie that you did not have my best interest at heart. Mm. When you understand that we are one flesh in spirit, it makes no sense for a husband not to have his wife's best interest at heart. Why would that? Well, you know what I mean? Selfish motivations, not regarding me and my heart and my desires, would not serve you or benefit you in any way.
Right. Oh, you want me to say something about that?
I thought you might.
No, I just said right. I agreed, and that was the end of it. I think that's crucial for both parties. A lot of times when couples get married, it turns into a fight about each other's needs not being met. And sometimes it's valid, sometimes those are valid things. But a lot of times, like you're saying, it happens because one person feels like their needs aren't going to be met. And so sometimes there's an intentional not meeting the other's needs because, my needs aren't getting met, so I'm going to whatever. And so, I think a big thing is recognizing we're on the same team. It's kind of like we talked about with our daughter, telling her, hey, we're on the same team. Let's not fight about this. And so it's applying that same principle to your spouse, because it's so easy to just pit each other against each other. And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right. I think the verse that most people gravitate towards in discussing roles with husbands and wives in marriage is in Ephesians chapter 5. We're just going to read it real quick so you guys have a baseline, but you probably are familiar with it. Verse 22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Then verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. And then it repeats what we already heard in Genesis. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. That's intense. I feel like the initial response in an unhealed, unhealthy place in reading that passage is, like defensiveness. You try to protect yourself, put up a shield. Like, it's kind of to...
I think even more than that, we tend to focus on the other person. So instead of reading the Bible for what the Bible says for us, we read the Bible and then we insert people in there that have offended us or hurt us. And so you have your husband or your wife in this instance where, oh man, my husband he just doesn't show me love like that. Or, oh man, my wife, she just does not respect me. Like the Bible says she's supposed to respect me. And so we get so focused on that instead of our job and our role. So mine would be to love my wife. And so then we just allow that to completely ruin and destroy our relationship with each other, is focusing on the other person and saying, they're not respecting me. They're not loving me.
And it looks like selfishness, but I think on the inside, when you really dig in, it's fear. I think it stems from fear. And we've talked a little bit about this before, John and I have, where we definitely had the power struggle in our marriage, the back and forth. I was 6 months pregnant when we got married. And that first year of marriage was so hard. It was so hard. We had a baby. I had lived on my own. He was living with his brother and sister. And so it's just like I had years of doing things a certain way. He had ways that he wanted to do things. So we're trying to navigate that. We had childhood wounds that we had completely untouched, like no healing from them because we didn't know they existed. And we were wounding each other constantly. So then by the time, 10 years later, when we finally reached a not even breaking point, but just a very pivotal moment in our marriage. I don't know. It felt like a breaking point. And I don't think it was, at least you remember that in your mind, it was I was like, he's about to leave. Like everything's done. We're done. Oh yeah. And you were like, what is she thinking? That's crazy.
This is like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah. I think that we had basically just so much, we just had to understand. We had so many, I don't know, preconceived thoughts and patterns. And we really had to break it all down and figure out what the root of it was. And for me, a lot of it was a lack of trust, which stemmed from a fear that you may put your needs above mine. And so I was holding on tightly and not letting him have control. And I was making decisions and I was guarding our time and guarding our resources and guarding my heart from my own husband, because I didn't trust you to put me first, if that makes sense. Yeah. I didn't know what it was at the time. I couldn't have understood it. I knew I didn't want to be controlling and I knew I didn't want to be in charge because that's a heavy burden to make all the decisions. It is exhausting. And I think it wore on me heavily for a long time. But I also couldn't stop.
Yeah.
But I had to identify what that was. I had to call it out as fear in order to understand it, in order to start the healing process.
Right.
Do you remember that moment of what kind of shifted for you? Because I do feel like there was a very significant shift in the way that you started treating me. And not that he was not unloving before, but it was still different.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I saw was the full context was the truth of the matter, just to be frank, is you were leading our home. And it was kind of allowed on my end because it was easier, because you were very confident. You were very like assertive. You're not someone who shies away from saying how you feel or think. And so it was like, oh, she knows what she's talking about and she knows what she's doing. I'm just going to trust her that she's making these decisions. Okay, cool. Yeah, you can make those decisions. Like it just didn't like even, I didn't even consider, I wasn't like relenting my leadership to you. It was just like, oh, okay, like, cool. You like making decisions. That's great.
It was passivity.
It was it became passive, and, passive because there was like not always, but there tended to be butting of heads, and it was just easier to relent and be like, okay, you know what? Like, this isn't worth it, even if it was. And so I think it was recognizing that that because you were carrying that burden of running our home basically and leading the home, it also brought lots of, it was a burden. Like it was a heavy burden that I didn't realize that's why you were carrying, like, that's why you were even carrying yourself the way you were carrying yourself.
I was weighed down and heavy and
like everything
stressed
was
all the time.
Stressed all the time. There'd be like a mess, and like it was like, yeah, we can clean it up in like 5 minutes, but it would be something that would set you off. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, she's just, and so then I finally recognized, and it was probably, I don't know what actually got me to that point. I think it was happening whenever I was like doing Living Waters work and stuff. Whenever, if you didn't watch that Living Waters, Denise Boggs podcast, I was working there and just getting a lot of like insight as I'm recording videos for her. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just like mind blowing stuff that I needed to hear. And so
healing the heart. So we talked, the podcast he's talking about was called Childhood Trauma is Not an Identity. You can go back and listen to that. But we interviewed a friend of ours who John had been recording videos for. She runs a ministry helping people uncover areas where they have hardened their heart, and where that hardened heart affects their relationships. It affects the way that they love their spouses or their children or themselves. And it all stems from woundedness.
Yeah.
So you were starting to realize some things from your
starting to
childhood.
see some of the things that I already kind of like had seen, but didn't know how to like identify it. Like having problems with relationships, like, and just friendships, even like where I would like desire a friendship with somebody, and it would basically like, once I felt secure in that relationship, I would be like, okay, see ya, I'm out of here. Like this was good. I got my fix, if you will, of needing validation. And a lot of that stemmed from when my dad left when I was younger. And I knew there was something there and some kind of connection, but the way she just was laying it out was like, oh my goodness, this is what I needed to hear. And so it really just opened my eyes to
your triggers.
Yeah, my triggers for sure. And I think that's what started softening you, was me not blowing up over everything that was like frustrating to me.
Well, for me, that probably reminded me of my childhood, and wounds.
And you
so
just
like
shut down.
His things that would trigger him, because I would threaten his feeling of masculinity or his feelings of security or whatever it was, he would get triggered and blow up. He struggled with anger for a while, but you've come like so far in all of that.
Thanks,
but you're welcome. Him softening towards me and his responses and being gracious with me, I didn't have to have my guard up or like feel, scared. And I feel like too, there was a time where early on in our marriage, we might disagree about something and you would go behind my back and do it, like a large purchase or something.
Yeah.
And so that for me was like, I can't trust you. I can't trust you because I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to be upset. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. Like, but to me, that all eroded the trust.
Yeah, it was easier to just go do the thing. And to be fair, it wasn't like ridiculous purchases. It was like, hey, I need this would really help my business. No, I just wanted to, like, I'm not like out buying lottery tickets and things like that. Like, it was like, hey, like I need to make this purchase to make my video quality better. And it would be the resource guarding would come in.
Fear driven because we were like scraping by, and it would be an expensive video purchase where it would make me feel fear. That would vary up like, okay, do you need that or can you do it without it? Because,
right.
But instead of addressing my fear and helping me feel safe and secure,
it was me feeling like, oh, you don't respect that I can make this decision and you're just questioning me like a child. Like that was the mindset.
So I'll just do it.
So I'm just going to do it. And when you figure it out, then we'll deal with that then, which was wrong, obviously.
But so I was like, so then I think that led to me feeling like he doesn't have my best interest at heart. He doesn't care about what I need or what I want or what I feel, because he even hearing me out had to be an argument. And so you started to change that approach a little where I could tell you how I felt and it didn't threaten you the same way. I think you were making probably a really conscious decision to not be threatened, because
Very
inside
conscious.
you were probably like, ah.
Well, I'd be like walking into the conversation, like, don't get angry. She's going to say the opposite of what you want her to say. So just prepare yourself and then, be reassuring and be, just talk calmly. That way you can at least have the conversation. And so, yeah, that was kind of like my mindset, back to the stress and the way that how you're having to carry yourself. And, honestly, like I saw that I didn't know what to do with that. Like I knew it needed to be different, but I didn't know how. And I was like, I don't know what to do about that. Like, how am I supposed to fix that? Yeah. Like, I know I'm the man of this house and I need to be the leader and I need to help lead my wife out of this, but I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a lot of that was kind of giving me like understanding. And even now, like I think even recently with like me, conversations we've had where I'm like, hey, I'm taking this, I'm going to take this away from you because it's too heavy for you to carry. And like, I've been working out. So,
and I see that as love now, where like before it was not that you were doing it out of love and to protect me. It was more of I'm supposed to be the leader. I want control. I want to have things my way. Like, right. It was this forceful power struggle between us, and not because I wanted control, because I think deep down, like I also probably knew it was heavy and stressful, like making every decision. I had so much decision fatigue. I still do. I still struggle with making decisions. I think that also stems from childhood, because I could never make the fully right decision. There's always something wrong with it, Yeah. So it's difficult for me. And I think that, but I needed you to come in from a place of love and of like, hey, I'm going to carry that for you because I love you and I care about you. Or like hearing me out in my fears and saying, I understand how this is making you feel. I need you to trust me. I've got this. I've prayed about it. I've gone to the Father. I've fasted about it. Whatever. Like, I am sure that this is the right thing to do, because deep down, I want to trust you, and I do trust you. But that fear creeps in and the enemy gets talking, and then I'm like, well, I don't know, because blah, blah, blah. And you're like, but it used to offend you. And now it doesn't so much offend you, sometimes maybe a little bit. But
well, I think it's kind of like, maybe did you say it just now, or was it with Denise, but you're talking about validating the lies. So like there was the lie there of like feeling a certain way, but then when I'd come through with my anger, it would be like, oh yeah, I can't trust the guy. Yep. See?
Yeah. I can't even talk to him about it. So how am I supposed to trust? Yeah.
Right.
And so that brings us back to like, definitions matter. What is the Bible's definition of love? Because you read here, and I'm going to say it, and it might be controversial. And I know, wives, that we are supposed to submit to our husbands, even though they're not perfect, because they're not. We are supposed to do that. And if your husband is not following God and walking with him, it's even harder. That's your first prayer right there, is prayer and fasting for the Holy Spirit to draw him nearer and to convict him and open his eyes to areas where he needs to, to follow Christ's example. But husbands that want to be the leader, that means you go first.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. That means you go first. You should. If you are expecting your wife to submit to you and respect you before you'll love her properly, you already don't deserve the title of leadership. So in Ephesians, again, it said,
wow,
husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. We need the biblical definition of love to understand what that role looks like. And that's in Corinthians 13. Oh, is that a goat?
Well, while you're getting that, the thing too is, this isn't even a different author. This is the exact same author who wrote Corinthians and Ephesians. And so we even especially can be like, okay, this is what he means when he says love, because he has written it out and defined it for us.
This is a long one, but it's a good one. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. That's the kind of love that husbands are expected to have for their wives. We look at the role of the wife as submissive, and we think that that is like such a lowly place to be, to have to submit to your husband and follow him in all the things. But I think when you really can like zoom out and look at the responsibility on a husband and the responsibility on a wife, the amount of humility it takes to be the leader in the home, for a husband to love his wife this way, like that's humble.
Yeah.
There's no pride in that, in serving your wife above yourself and your family above yourself. You had something?
Yeah, I think, for me, it was like, love is patient. I was not being patient with my wife. I was easily angered. I kept records of wrongs. Like there were so many things I was doing that, and I still probably am definitely needing to work on. But it's like recognizing these things like, okay, I'm not doing half of this, maybe even all of it. And so I'm not fulfilling my duty as the husband here. And that's where it has to start, especially if you want to be a leader, then flip and lead and start doing the thing you're supposed to do. And then your wife can follow after you. I don't know, it's such a childish way of thinking that like the other person needs to go first. It's just like, why do we got to read the Bible and we got to read it for ourselves, and we got to stop trying to expect everybody else to live up to this standard, especially if we are not living up to that standard ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in Colossians 3:19, so we hear we know the Ephesians verse about wives loving, or about wives submitting to their husbands and husbands loving their wives. But it's also in Colossians. It says in 3:18, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Like that's even a different thing. Do not be harsh with them. Another translation says, do not be bitter with them. So think about how much my brokenness has caused bitterness in you, where you want me to respond a certain way or be a certain way or treat you a certain way. And so you get bitter and then unloving. And it's just the cycle. But we both need to be understanding our roles and what that looks like. And I think it's not just important for you to lead in love. I do think that changed everything in our home, because not only was he treating me in a way that made me feel safe and like I could trust him. You don't follow a person you don't trust. If you do, there's something that like really, that's a whole nother issue. Most people don't follow someone they don't trust. And so not only did he provide that for me, But the overflow was that he was setting the example for how I lead our children, and the tone of our whole home. You are a leader, not in just saying this is how things are going to be done, but actually walking it out so that we can see it and we don't see a hypocrite when we hear him say one thing and see his actions. Like, there is love that overflows from what he's poured out to me that I can pour into our children. And it really changed everything, I think. So again, we do have to honor our roles despite our spouse's shortcomings. There are times where it is difficult still to trust because I might think you're wrong about a certain decision.
Usually.
But my role, my job would be to express that in a loving, in a meek manner, to tell him, hey, this is how this is making me feel. I feel worried, or I feel concerned about it because, or I disagree because, and just to lovingly let him know it's his job to either take that into consideration and say, okay, maybe we can wait, maybe we can do things differently, or to say, hey, this is the way we're going. I love you. And to talk me through what I'm feeling so that I still feel safe and secure. Because why wouldn't you want that? You know, as a man, like, you'd want your wife to safely trust in you. And
for sure. I think too, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think also if you are a wife who your husband is not doing this, then there is the aspect of like still stepping up and you being the first one to make these actions, kind of like you were talking about submitting to your husband. It's hard when he's not leading the way he's supposed to lead. But I think it's if you're praying for your husband and then you're also submitting to him to the best of your ability. So how much of an influence is that going to have on him, so that he steps into that leadership role that he's supposed to?
It's ingrained in men to want to protect and to provide for and to treasure their women, like since the beginning of time. I mean, it's literally how God created you.
Yeah.
But so often women, we have wounds from our childhood or from our spouse that we hold on to, that we allow to put us into a masculine frame, you know, of the spirit, where we are holding on to control of things and making the decisions because we're afraid, or because our needs aren't being met. If your spouse is not meeting your needs, your husband is not protecting and providing, that you're going to protect and provide for yourself. But that is a masculine role. Doing it for yourself essentially doesn't leave him room to do it for you, which is where John was saying he became the passive husband because I was being masculine and protecting and, you know, meeting my own needs. And it wasn't, or it wouldn't ever be, even if you hadn't gone first, we would still be in the same situation unless I would be willing to put that masculinity aside and to be vulnerable enough to be hurt. Trusting in God, allowing God to fight for me, and allowing your husband the room to see that your needs aren't met. And again, this isn't speaking for every marriage, because there are some men out there whose hearts are just hardened and who are just not treating you right. And that is not biblical. I don't believe it's biblical to be abused in any way in a marriage. I don't think that was God's design or intention. And so that's a whole another issue. Please don't think we're saying just pray and submit and everything will be great. But obviously, if you love your husband and you want things to work, then the fighting sometimes looks like laying your armor down, being vulnerable enough to stop protecting yourself and to stop protecting your own needs. Again, not physically or even like emotionally. If there's abuse, not what we're saying. But yeah, because when I'm doing all the things for you or diminishing you in any way, like it's not good enough, or I could do it better, or you did it wrong, then you're going to be like, I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. And so then I'm back to having to do it for myself, and him being passive and not interested, because we're meant to build each other up and encourage each other. It's my job to build you up and encourage you into learning how to do the things you can't do well yet as a man, so that you can I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope this has blessed you guys. We will probably do more of this because I feel like this is endless and endless. But we've got to go pick up our children. So this is a wrap on today's episode. We love you guys. If you want to tune in to a live discussion about this and participate, get in the comments and chat with us, share your thoughts, ask questions, ask for prayer or guidance. We have a community online at rooteddeeply.org/join. We would love to have you be a part of it, building each other up in faith and family and all the things. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are looking to be a part of a Christian community with other women who will build you up, encourage you, and challenge you to grow in your faith, and if you want to join in the discussions that we're having in the Rooted Deeply podcast, you can head to rooteddeeply.org/join and get started. We would love to have you there.